Good morning, thriving farmers. So today I'm going to do something a bit different. Today I'm going to do just a general Q&A for the questions I see come up in our group. So we have your Successful Farm Business group, in our Small Farm University group, and then I'm going to even throw in a few questions from the Market Gardening Success group. It's a new format, a little bit different, and I do apologize for the crickets in the background. I have literally found and removed 8 from my office, and there are several that are in the wall, I believe, still chirping loudly. So you will hear that during this podcast. All right, so let's start with a question from Grant. Now, Grant asks, do you guys store radishes for market if your market is 5 days away? Do you cut the tops off or leave on? Well, there's a couple different things here. Depends on the quality of your radishes and the quality of your cooling system and how you harvested them too. So 3 factors there. I mean, if everything is perfect, I mean, they're beautiful radishes, they've got healthy tops, you harvested them in the cool of the morning, they immediately got chilled, and you have really cool coolers that can hold it at, let's say, 33 degrees, I think absolutely you could leave the tops on because obviously the tops have a better presentation and you'll be able to sell them probably for a better price with the tops on. But, if those things aren't ideal, then I would just go ahead and top and sell by usually like a half pint or a pint container for those. So again, that's how I would approach this, and it really depends on your situation. Second question is from Bonnie. Now, Bonnie asks, what ratio of sand to seed do you use for seeding fine seeds? I've never done this before. Well, Bonnie, I haven't either. So I actually wouldn't recommend that. Especially if you're using a seeder, I would not definitely recommend this. And again, for seeders, there's a bunch of different seeders on the marketplace for the small farmer. It starts with things like the Earthway, the 4-point pinpoint seeder, the 6-row seeder. Then you've got obviously the Jang, which is on the more expensive side, but is much, much more of a precision seeder. So, I actually frequently will still use the Earthway seeder. A lot of people look at me and laugh, but what we've done with the Earthway seeder, and we actually have a training in our Small Farm University about this, is we have built out a collection of, let's say, 15 or 16 customized plates. So we'll buy multiples of the different plates and either drill more holes in them or tape some holes up or file down the actual cups that hold the seed so that we actually have ways to get all different types and quantities of seed to flow through the Earthway. So the other quick tip on that I would recommend is that you want to start about 2 feet before your bed to actually start turning the front wheel, which means that as soon as you start into the end of your bed, that you're actually dumping seed out. Because that's another thing we see is that if you don't have that seed queued up, it can take 6 or 8 inches to actually, or 10 inches to actually get started in the bed. So Bonnie, yeah, I don't recommend that. I mean, if you're seeding by hand, maybe you might want to do that, but definitely find with a seeder, you're going to tear a seeder up if you were thinking of doing that. Next question here is from Lewis, and Lewis has said, arrived to this unfortunate site this morning. This polytunnel is probably due to a new skin, but we obviously need to make our money go as far as possible so we can extend life where possible. Has anyone ever adequately patched up a tear of this size? They're showing a tear probably about 4 foot long, about 2 foot wide. My biggest question is, what caused the tear? If it was a close by branch, if it was an animal. So first we need to identify what's causing that, because if we can identify what's causing that, then we can figure out, what to do in the future, prevent this. But if it's new plastic, you can absolutely patch a relatively big tear. We've actually found the best luck with Tyvek tape. It's a tape they use in the housing industry to hold the house wrap together. You can get white and you can get red. And so we found that actually kind of be a really high quality. It sticks really well. And it is kind of white or red, so it's not clear, but it sticks much better than the commercial tape they sell, and it's a lot cheaper too. And if your plastic is 4 years old or older, maybe your plastic just failed from age. And if that's the case, I would just go ahead and remove it, because you'll find that after 4 years or so in the sun that your plastic gets cloudy enough that it's actually reducing production in your tunnel. And if you change it out, you'll actually get better production. Your plants won't get as leggy, so they'll stay nice and more compact. And so we absolutely would see that on our farm, when the plastic started to get old, that we did need to change it out. So definitely think about that, but also think about, to kind of summarize, think about how it happened and try to figure out how you can prevent that from happening in the future, because that's a really big rip. All right, so here we go. Next question is first time from Patty. It's first time growing shallots. Best way to sell them by the pound, the pints, or quarts? Well, Patty, it really depends on who you're selling to. So let's say you're selling to a restaurant. Usually they're going to want it by the pound because that's how they buy things usually. I would sell it by like a 3-pound case or something like that. And then if you're selling at retail markets, we love to break things up by quantities. And here's the reason why. Because if you break it up by quantity, people aren't looking at the price per pound and price comparing. So again, this is something we teach in our farmers market challenge. But if you see your competition selling your shallots by the pound, sell them by the pint. If your competition is selling by the pint, sell maybe by the half pound because shallots can be a little bit more on the more expensive side. So it brings down the displayed price a little bit. So I've definitely seen that happen as well. So there's a couple different ways to do that. And with shallots especially, it's better to have a recipe with them because they're more of a unique item. They're a little bit more mild, more fine flavored. And so get a recipe with it. And then you can also think about doing a demo with them or working with a local chef to kind of pull some recipes together as well. We've done that in the past as well. Yeah, so again, get them out there. Get them in little containers is my go-to. There were some little half-pint containers we used that were wooden that really made them stand out. And treat them as a premium product because they do take a lot more effort to grow than, let's say, a regular onion. Next question is here from Jen. Now, Jen asks, anyone have a source for a tutorial for writing a farm business plan? Interesting question. We don't necessarily recommend a farm business plan unless you're going for serious financing. So if you're going for serious financing and require one, then yeah, pull one together. But I mean, the thing you learn about most people is that most business plans kind of go out the window the moment they start running the business because businesses change so much. You know, you may start with something and then immediately realize that something changes. And if you are looking to do some side of like business overview or something like that, we would definitely recommend a business model canvas. So if you just Google business model canvas, a bunch of them will come up. And basically it's a much simplified business plan and it kind of lists your opportunities and it lists kind of like what your product you're offering. And so it's a 1 page usually. And obviously when you write it out in detail, it can be more than 1 page, but the canvas is a 1-pager. And that kind of gives you an overview of the entire business at a glance. And so definitely recommend doing that. And then, obviously running all your numbers on some spreadsheets. And that's usually what a financial officer is going to be looking for. And so that's going to probably get you most of the way there. I did write a business plan in college. One of the classes I took made us write a business plan, and I think I got an A for it. So I've definitely written them, but I just don't think it's in this day and age that's necessary unless you're going for some serious financing. I would definitely recommend the business model canvas. All right, next question is from Ken. Ken asks, does anyone have other vendors at their market that do not display prices for their produce? I have one at mine that does not display any pricing, but will walk by and look at my pricing. He then sells his limited amount of product for anywhere from 15 to 30 cents a pound less than I do. I sell him at every market, but it ticks me off that he's using this tactic. Yeah, great question, and actually got a ton of comments in our group. So I think you got definitely some really good feedback there, but I will give you some feedback here because I think this is an important thing and it drives me nuts too that people do this. And it's also wanted to thank Stan and Troy for bringing me up the new farmers market survey that the professor from Cornell did. And we're actually going to have him on the podcast. So if you go to our Successful Farm Market, your Successful Farm Business discussion group, there is a survey, I think that Troy Teets posted. And so if you go ahead and check that out, it's a really good survey and they go into detail on all things about why consumers shop. And it was by Todd Schmidt, Roberta Stevenson, and Erikubo, I can't pronounce this, Saara. That's called Assessing the Barriers to Increasing Customer Participation and Farm Sales at Farmers Markets, Implications for Marketing Strategy. So yeah, it's a fabulous little research paper, and we are going to get them on the podcast. But basically, one of the number one things that drive people from not buying at farmers markets is vendors that don't display the price. A couple big things that came out is customers want high quality product and at it as most convenient as possible. So if there's no parking, if it's hard to access the farmer's market, they're not going to shop. So definitely recommend hopping in the group and reading that. And actually, it'd be a good area to stop and tell you to join us for our upcoming Farmers Market Challenge. So if you go to farmersmarketchallenge.com/quiz, you can take a quiz that will actually walk you through what stage you are, what type of farmers market vendor you are. We've identified 4 different stages as you kind of attend farmers markets and the level you're at. And so definitely recommend going to farmersmarketchallenge.com/quiz, taking the quiz, and we'll send you some personalized recommendations for your farmers market stand. And you'll also get an opportunity to sign up for the challenge, which is happening October 1, 2, and 3. So definitely recommend going and checking that out. And I just wanted to share a few results from this past challenge. So Matt says, I had a 67% increase in sales over our best day this year. I had no time for pictures. I was lucky to get the video. I hope you can see what we've done. So he's just talking about how successful they were, the things they implemented that we talk about in the challenge. Yolanda was saying, this is my setup today for my hotspot. I put up my new no sugar added jam. I sold out of them, had a run on the vinegars, had recipe cards for them, and sold out several other jam flavors. Thanks, guys. Hashtag Farmers Market Challenge. And then Troy says, here's our booth from this morning's market. All the tips from the challenge we tried worked great. Love the 3-day challenge. So he enjoyed it as well. So yeah, definitely recommend going to farmersmarketchallenge.com/quiz. Take the quiz and you can also join the challenge as well. So again, we talk all things farmers markets, and it's a fabulous 3-day challenge. It usually is about a 10 to 12 minute video, and then maybe a task that will take you 5 to 10 minutes to implement in your stand. And then on the weekend, we do a prize for one of the best implementers at their market. So we do a social media challenge as well. So you post your pictures from your stand with hashtag Farmers Market Challenge. And we'll go through and pick a winner. And yeah, we had a lot of fun with that when we ran that back in August. All right, on to the next question. And this one is from Susie. She says, we are planning for spring farmers market and have yet to build a walk-in cooler. Who has any experience using cooler, ice packs, and ice chests to cool your harvest and transport to market? We currently use a second household fridge to store our greens, but that is small scale. All right, so Susie, you're probably not going to like what I say, but I would highly recommend you build a cooler. And actually, this, and to me, is such an important aspect to the small farm that it actually made it into our new course that we're doing for farmers. So we're doing a brand new course that's going to launch here in a couple weeks, all about saving 5 hours a week on your farm. So we've basically identified the 10 areas that we see farms that are successful and are managing their time well. We see those are the 10 areas that they are doing well in. So we basically built a course around those 10 areas, and this actually made it in because it's such an important part. And here's the thing, with a cooler, it automatically removes risk. You know, you can harvest a crop on Monday and sell it at a Saturday market because it's going to store so well. The other thing is, because you can keep that temperature pre-chilled product, even if you harvest on a Friday for a Saturday, will last so much better on the table at farmers market. So if it's cooled down to that 34, 36 degrees, it will last so much better on that table. You know, we definitely recommend building a cooler, Susie, and you can do it relatively cheaply. I mean, you can frame one out and build one with just foam, and you can frequently buy used foam on Craigslist and then just use an air conditioner with a CoolBot, or you can buy a used cooler online. And Susie, you've got a bunch of ways to do that too. You can look on Craigslist, you can look on Facebook Marketplace, you can talk to local commercial refrigeration people to see if they're pulling out any things they're throwing out, and just kind of search around your community, ask different people. Also, commercial kitchen suppliers, retailers, there's usually a lot of those on Facebook Marketplace or just in the phone book. Man, who uses a phone book anymore? But like, I guess the online yellow pages is where it's searched now. But yeah, you can usually pick them up for cheap. Our first cooler, we paid $100 for the panels and then had to obviously pay to get the evaporator and condenser hooked up. But that was before the days of the CoolBot. Since then, we've used a lot of CoolBots. So yeah, Susie, you're going to love having a proper cooler. And I've also said another option too, is to build a cooler in a enclosed trailer. So that way you can tow it to the field to harvest with and then tow it right to the farmer's market to keep things cool at your actual farmer's market. So that might be another option for you. And actually, we have a course on Harvest Wash Pack. Our Harvest Wash Pack course actually goes into detail on all things cooler. I think we talk about them for more than an hour. So that's also an option for you at some point, another resource. All right, another question from Benjamin. Benjamin asks, can goat manure be added to beds fresh? I talked with a goat farmer today who said it's ready to use, unlike chicken manure. Well, it's definitely not as hot as chicken manure, but it definitely can burn. And here's the thing though, Benjamin, I would definitely not recommend adding it because of the food safety aspect. So, I mean, if you were growing things like sweet corn, I might be okay with it because obviously sweet corn, the ear is feet from the ground. And when you harvest it, you usually put it right in container and it's out of the field. Unlike, let's say, a green, which the lettuce leaves or the spinach leaves are actually touching the ground. But just for food safety aspect, you're not going to want to do that. Unless it's changed recently, they still haven't come out with what the ruling is on fresh manure. But you're probably going to want to stick to, let's say, the certified organic, which I believe is around 120 days before planting. So you're definitely going to want to not put that on right away. Just compost it or put on some beds that aren't going to be planted till the spring. And then you should be completely fine for that. All right, another question here from Charles. And Charles asks, total newbie question, apologize, but we are trying to lay transplants by end of the week. Irrigation. If one is to use landscape fabric over beds, is drip irrigation essential? I realize it would be beneficial, especially since we're in Texas and 95 degrees plus, but with the tail end of summer, we wanted to see if we can just run overhead until next year. Yeah, Charles, absolutely. You can just run overhead. Even on regular plastic, which is not permeable, we would actually run just overhead. And here's the reason why. The overhead, we just make sure that the hole for the transplant was big enough that water would actually go in and set the transplant. And then between our beds, we would actually put down organic mulches of like straw or a living mulch. And the water, when we overhead watered, would just drop down into that and then just percolate sideways into the bed. And that was fine. And then the roots would just run out in there as well. But if you're doing ground cloth, that is really permeable, and it depends on the type of ground cloth. If you've got the higher quality ones, usually they're relatively permeable, water will go through. I've seen some of the cheaper ones which aren't quite as good for that. But I'm assuming you're using something like a DeWitt, and if you're using that, it's absolutely fine to go with just overhead. If you have plenty of water. Now, the thing about drip irrigation is it will save you so much water, and that's why we definitely recommend going with drip. If you were on we were on city water, and so we pay for our water. And that's why we try to use as little as possible. So we collect rainwater, and then we're on drip as much as possible. So we do some overhead. When we were in New York and we were on a well, we had a very limited well. So that's why we switched to as much drip as possible, because we were trying to save as much water as possible so that people in the house could still take showers. So that was the challenge there. But yeah, I mean, for overhead, I definitely recommend the micro sprinklers there. All sorts of options there. The mega nets or the wobblers are both two great options. So I think you'd be fine there. Just make sure you're not watering in the middle of the day. So we definitely have seen some people that have been irrigating in the middle of the day with city water and the chlorine reacting on the leaves and causing problems. If you're on a well, you probably will not have those same chemicals in your well. Okay, final question here, guys. Smitty is asking, is it too late to plant cover crops? Brand new ground, lawn has been removed, has been tilled, and first pass of big rocks. My thought is, even with small rocks remaining, a winter cover crop would be better than just tarping in terms of building soil quality. Any advice? And he also says he has seed for vetch, crimson clover, and tillage radish. So definitely recommend getting a cover crop in there. At this time of year, it's mid-September. Depends on where you are. Even if you're like really far north, you'll probably get some growth. And, you know, what I would recommend is I would get the cover crop to grow for a month or so, and then you can put a tarp on for the middle of the winter. And the thing is, by the middle of the spring, with that cover crop on there, that tarp, the cover crop will have completely disappeared. The worms will have taken care of it, and you'll probably have a nice, loose area to plant. I would actually go ahead and make your beds now. If you can, go ahead and or at least mark out where your beds are going to be. And if you do a good job of prepping those, put the cover crop on, then put your tarp on. By spring, when you pull that tarp back, you can plant right into those prepped beds. So for cover crop, what I would recommend, if you want to have it winter kill, you're probably going to want to do some oats, and you could do the crimson clover, because I believe that will winter kill, and the tillage radish would be fine as well. If you do the vetch, frequently the vetch will overwinter, and if you did rye will overwinter too, cereal rye. So cereal rye and vetch is my go-to for overwintering, but if you're not trying to get that and trying to get it prepped early in the spring for crops, you're going to do the oats, and then peas is good too. You can throw some crimson in there, but crimson's not going to do much this time of the year. So oats and peas is the go-to, and then adding the tillage radish will be completely fine, as that will help with your compaction. There you go, guys. So I hope you enjoyed this mini episode of just Q&A with Michael. Again, we apologize for the extraneous noise in the background with the crickets. We will hopefully be able to get more of them out of here this week. And if you guys have more questions, feel free to just send us questions if you want, and give me feedback on this episode. If you enjoyed this episode, if you enjoyed this format, we have talked about adding an episode a week with just this format, Q&A. But I have to have significant audience feedback for Nicole to let me do this. Yeah, she's the one that keeps me straight and keeps me focused, which is amazing. But yeah, we might be able to tweak her arm if a bunch of you guys email in saying how you enjoyed this. So again, thank you guys so much for listening. And if you haven't yet, do check out the farmersmarketchallenge.com/quiz, because we are starting that in a couple weeks, and I know you are going to see results from that. So again, thanks for listening, and have a great rest of your day.